It didn't result in an outlay. Well, they can't result in an outlay unless another action happens. It will eventually have an outlay, which that was our definition of VA. It is an arcane concept. It originated back when people like Sherman, General Sherman in the Civil War was marching through the South. The Congress gave him the ability to feed his troops and forage, feed his troops and feed his horses. But they didn't give him any money to do it. They just said, you have the authority to go up to Farmer Brown and say, I'm taking your corn, and eventually the Congress is going to pay you for it. That concept developed into contract authority. You have the authority to incur an obligation that commits the federal government to make an outlay, but you don't have the cash at the moment to do it. That has to be followed by an appropriation, if you will, from one of those appropriation bills, which doesn't result in an outlay, because the outlay came from the contract authority. But in order to liquidate that obligation, you have to have that appropriation to liquidate contract authority. Arcane, I don't know if there's 12 accounts out of 1,500 that still use it. It's too many for me. Anyhow, borrowing authority permits the obligation against the authority to borrow. You have the ability again to incur an obligation, and in order to disperse against it, one of two things has to happen. You can receive an offsetting collection, or you can get an appropriation to liquidate the borrowing, if you will. But the borrowing, if, you have the authority to incur an obligation, it comes time to pay that obligation. If you don't have the money in your account, it could result because of the offsetting collection being credited to your account. You have the authority. Hello? Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. You have the authority to borrow money from the treasury or somebody else. And and that borrowing, of course, has to be repaid. And that borrowing will be repaid from those collections that you would receive. An example, we'll go back to TVA. TVA has borrowing authority. Again, if it needs to build some transmission lines before it has the money to actually do it, it can borrow the money from Treasury and then repay that borrowing with spending authority from offsetting collections. I guess I answered your question, questioner, because you appeared and went away. If you still have a question, let me know. Spending authority from offsetting collections, we talked about that. That is, money is lawfully credited to the account, and you have, under law, the ability to spend that money. What are the dimensions of budget authority? Amount. How much is available? A definite amount. It is hereby appropriated $100. Indefinite amount. It is hereby appropriated such sums as may be necessary, or in such amounts as are collected. Okay. Purpose. What can I spend the money on? Salaries and expenses, contracts, grants, loans, capital assets. How can I use the money? Time. How long can the money be used? BA is available for new spending up to 1 fiscal year. This is known as annual appropriations. Or more than 1 fiscal year with a specific end date known as multi-year money. Or until it is spent. This is known as no-year money. The default is annual money. That is, if the language does not specify that the money is available until 2010, whatever, or it does not say it's available until it's spent, like spent in this actual year. It is available for the year it is provided. And when we say available, we mean available for obligation. Because annual and multi-year BA expire and are canceled 5 years later. That is, it had an availability for obligation, be it 1 year, 3 years, whatever the law said, and up to 5 years after that, it can be spent for some certain purposes, but not for new obligations. Upward adjustments and obligations. That boat you thought cost $2 million actually cost $2.5 million. Okay? It was a valid obligation that was incurred, and some of the money you use out of your account to pay for that increase in the value of the obligation, cost of the obligation. Okay. So, you have the unexpired phase. The amounts are available to incur new obligations and pay those bills. You have the expired phase. The BA is not available to incur new bills, but it is available to pay old bills. This phase usually lasts for 5 years unless provision of law extends the distribution period for programs that take longer to spend out. 5 years is the legal default. If there is specific permission in law, that can be extended beyond the 5 years. Cancellation phase. After the 5th year, the account is closed and is not available for any reason. Okay, hold on. Okay, we got 2 things, got a couple things going on here. Those people who are in the audience are getting, I think, a revised copy of the handout, which has everything in it. And, I'm sorry, we have a question.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Back to the last slide. The last slide is what are the 3 dimensions?
Yes. So my questions are about the 5-year stuff at the bottom.
Okay.
So if money's only good and annual appropriation increase of that 1 year was
Okay. After the 5th year, okay. After the 1st year has ended, you have the ability to incur new obligations. Okay. After that year, you can't incur any more new obligations. But you only spent 95%